be descriptive of what the embryo really looks like. There should also be full agreement between the term and the nature of the development and events occurring at that stage. In order to avoid confusion, each term should define a stage which has a clear beginning and an end, as is possible, in order to avoid any overlap between stages, or on the other hand, to avoid any gaps between one stage and another. Now, it was about this time that I began to study the Quran and to look at verses referring to embryology. So I found that there was a large terminology in the Quran referring to human development. Now, until recently, it was not known that this holy book of the Muslims and the Sunnah, or Hadith, the teachings of Muhammad, contained many citations referring to the stages of human development. Until recently, these statements were not clearly understood, since they referred to details in development which were scientifically unknown in earlier times. In fact, the Islamic system for classifying human embryos is amazing, since it was recorded in the 7th century A.D. Although Aristotle, as I mentioned before, the founder of the science of embryology, realized that chick embryos developed in stages from hen's eggs in the 4th century, he did not give any details about these stages. Also, the early human embryo is of such a minute size that detailed studies would have been impossible without the microscope. In the very early stages of human development, the first few days, it's so small that you could just barely see it. In other words, it's about the size of a period at the end of a sentence. And you could realize how, without our modern microscopes, you would not be able to see any of those details of the early stages. Now, as far as we know from the history of embryology, little was known about the staging and classification of human embryos until the last 100 years. As I've just mentioned. Moreover, the Quranic terminology fulfills the principles for nomenclature and terminology. For this reason, the descriptions of human embryos in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is that these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, by God. He could not have known such details because he was an illiterate man. He was not a scientist or an embryology, and he did not have scientific training. Now, in the following passages from the Quran, we introduce the concept of stages in human development. And this first verse was the first one that was shown to me. And you can read that there. God created man from a quintessence of clay. He then placed him as a nutfa, a droplet, in a place of settlement, firmly fixed. Then we make the nutfa into an alaka, a leech-like structure, and then he changed the alaka into a mudga, a chewed-like substance. Then we made out of that mudga isam, I can't read too well here, skeleton, and then we clothed the bones with muscles. Then we caused him to grow, and then we came into bone, into being, and attained the definitive human form. So blessed be God, the best to create. This is from one of the surahs. So, we have the next one, I believe, that shows this is the Islamic. Now, this are the stages that we found in the Quran, and it's taken a lot of study and discussion to arrive at the meaning of these stages. The first one is the nutfa, or the drop stage, and then the second is the klak, or shaping stage, and then the nasha, or the growth stage. Now, the proposed system is clear, it's comprehensive, and conforms with present embryological knowledge. And it's our hope that this terminology can be introduced internationally. But if nothing more, at least the Muslim science students can realize that the stages that we talk about in our embryology textbooks are the same. It's just that they have different names. Now, the principles for the terminology then, that they be descriptive of appearance, and that they reflect the processes occurring, and that they be avoid ambiguous beginning and an end. In other words, they should be clear as to what these stages refer to. And this was actually the first verse that was ever read to me when I was in Saudi Arabia, and I'd never, I knew that the Quran existed, but I'd never read it before. And when they asked me what this verse meant to me, I said, well, it was obvious. It makes you in the wombs of your mother, which is the uterus, of course. Womb is simply English translation of the Latin uterus, in your mothers in stages. So here is talking about stages, which is similar to what Hippocrates and Aristotle had talked about, one after another in 3 veils of darkness. Then I was asked what this 3 veils of darkness might be, and it occurred to me that it might be, as I've indicated here in these slides, that the first veil of darkness around this developing human would probably be the anterior abdominal wall, that is the skin, muscles, and so on around the mother, forming the wall, anterior wall of the mother's abdomen. 2, I thought, would be the wall of the uterus, the organ which contains the embryo, and then inside that uterus we have other membranes which we call the amnion and the chorion, and we combine that because they fuse together. We call it the amniochorionic membrane. Now, this was my initial interpretation of this, and I've heard many different other interpretations of what these veils of darkness are.